Hey, guys, I want to talk about TNON. I was avoiding this pretty much all day. I took, and I ended up taking two trades on this, which both ended up being small wins because I was covering at support. I wasn't actually really deep holding a lot of this. But one thing I always hate, always hate as a short seller, is I hate it when when there is thin volume, and I'm talking like this is obviously on a multi-day run, right? Shorts are going to want to hit this because they're like, oh, it's a low flow, it's extended. Um, there's fade potential, so they're very interested in shorting it, right? But I overall wasn't looking at this at all because of how thin the volume was. I always like to look at volume not just on the squeezes, but also at support, right? Really, what I want to see is I want to see consistent volume. I want to see like at least a couple 100,000 shares a minute every single, and not just on the squeezes, but like minute after minute after minute, like bare minimum. Like that's bare minimum what I want to see. Not just like 200K on the pops and the dumps, and then zero volume. You get a few minutes of high volume, then zero volume. Don't like it. Don't trade it. I think it messes with the fade. I think this is a good example of it messing with the fade. A lot of thin pumps like this have big fade potential, but they often have squeeze potential because the rigor is there's no real volume in the stock. They're just throwing bids up at support, and they're just soaking all these shares on no volume, right? Look at this. Some of these candles are like, that's an 8,000 share candle. That's a 3,000 share candle. Like, there's no real volume at support. Outside of these moves that everyone's trading long and short, there's no real volume in the stock. So I ended up avoiding this all the way until here. I thought the volatility, and see the volumes becoming more consistent, the volatility is becoming more consistent. I thought I can make an easier read. I actually shorted this candle at 12.27. This is a classic long trap candle. You push, you pull back to support, and then you give an aggressive initiation towards highs. And of course, I was actually doing a bookmap read. This is actually really cool about bookmap is that you can actually see, and if you've been watching my videos, you'll hear me talk about this concept of where is it? Up. Sorry. What time is that? 12:27. So that's 11:27 my time. Here. So here is the high day clear out and the deep pullback. And one thing you got to realize about deep pullbacks is it creates a lot of empty space in the order book, right? So I'm seeing this. I'm like, okay, volatility and volumes picking up. Could be an interesting trade. I see the deep pullback. Deep pullbacks always lead to this empty space on the book. And I see them start throwing up like little bids, right? There's a little bid, little bid, all these little bids. I'm like, all right, man. Like, the only orders I really see are at 350 and at 356, which is high day, and then 350 half dollar. And I'm like, I'm watching these bids come in, watching these bids, and then I see the big push from 330s up to 3.5. I knew there was offers there. It ended up having even more offers here, and I saw that there was very minimum bid support, right? So I started throwing up limits at 347. This was actually me and some other guys getting filled at 347. And I was just thinking, hey, there's this kind of minimal bids. They were supporting the bids. It was grindy. You get this grindy action, bid support, grindy action, bid support, and then you get the big push and no bid support. And I was like, and I like the structure. I like the idea that, this kind of gave a nice little squeeze, a nice little pullback, and then a potential long chase. I thought the liquidity thesis was pretty decent, and I shorted 347. And what's really interesting is I was like, okay, like it pulled back, the trade seems to be working, and then I'm looking at these bids, and look at this. They pulled this bid, it breaks that level. They pulled this bid. They're pulling the bids, which is great. And I'm seeing a little bit more orders start stacking on the ask. What happens when you pull the bids? You get a massive dump because now there's no bids there. And these are a bunch of stop losses getting executed. But I know this is trading like this thin grind where, it gets down to support and there's no volume anymore, right? So here's that crack. Got this little The reason you get this little manipulated candle is because after this crack, the order book is so thin. You can see right here. The order book's here's the crack. It's so thin that if anybody, literally you or me, if any of us slaps like 5, 10K shares in market orders, it will actually just teleport the stock up 25 cents because there's no orders on the book. But if these have no follow through, I'm really not concerned. And I saw them sacking some ass down here, some bids down here, and I'm like, you know what? This is kind of a grindy stock. That's a potential top move, but I'm heeding how thin the support is. Let me just cover some down here just in case and put my risk back up near 350s. Um, and then, yeah, and then I got stopped out on this rotation here towards high a day, right? So I covered some here, rotation up here, made a small amount of money because my average was pretty decent. And the only other trade I took was actually this trade, specifically on this candle. And this was another, again, the volume comes in, you start getting more consistent volume. That's a nice little squeeze. And let's see what time this was. Oh, here. So I'm just like watching this on the book, it's like I'm watching this squeeze, and a lot of times I'm seeing the higher lows form, and I'm just like, really, I'm just watching the bids. I'm like, man, they just been throwing up random bids on this. Like, see all these random bids. Here's a bid. Here's a bid. See how they're walking us up with these bids? I don't want to be shorting if the rigger's just constantly putting new bids, new bids, new bids, new bids, unless something happens, unless there's some change in behavior on bookmap. Especially, look, there's all this blank space up here. Don't want to short. See the constant bid support, not very fun. Um, and then what really made me short was they started stacking asks that were getting filled with no follow through, right? And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. It catches another bid, and then I noticed right here that all these bids that were here, this bid, this bid, this bid, they started pulling those bids, right? They start to pull those bids, and this is kind of like the last. So they put this bid here, they catch the orders, they initiate again, and now I see that there's essentially no bids all the way down the 425. So now the bids are kind of gone, but that's really not enough to make me short. I was keeping an eye on this 448 level, and again, we got a very, very bearish price action where this entire ask gets filled at 448. It pushes 1 cent or a couple cents, um, and then it starts to pull back. And this was on SSR, so I had to start like spamming my orders to try to get filled on this because, like we've seen in other videos, I like it when there's no bid support to the downside and big ask getting filled to the upside when it's in a structure that I think has possible potential to be at the top, right? So I actually ended up getting short 439, and we got our big crack, right? There's no bids. Goes straight through all the orders. And again, oh yeah, that's what happened. We get big crack to 420. I'm like, cool, trade's working. Here's your thin order book push. Again, I'm not really too afraid of these types of pushes unless there's follow through. It pulls back. I see a new ask get stacked. Again, I'm not seeing a whole lot of bid support to the downside. And then you get the big crack, right? And again, I was like, all right, cool. Nice big crack. This is possible top, man. And also, oh, by the way, I saw this too. They started stacking new ass, new ass, new ass. And then you get no bids on a potential, very long trappy type of move. And they pull it, right? Like, cool, possible top. Great. I think I nailed it. And then, again, when you get these deep pullbacks, this works both ways. You get all this empty space to the upside, and I'm going to remember. I'm like, all right, keep an eye on that, right? Like maybe the rigor's not done. And just like we saw on my PXMD video, and just like we saw on my SI video from a month ago, a common rigor tactic is to have these massive dumps and no orders to the upside, and then they start to throw huge bids, right? So there's some bid support, right? There's some bid support, but it's really as it starts approaching those bids, Um, I posted in my Discord. I was like, oh, they're stacking bids in the 380s, right? You could see them. You can see no offers to the upside, right? It's empty, and then you can start to see them stack more and more. You have all these levels that are being held, and where this is stock bottom, it bottoms right at where the bids are. The bids actually don't even get touched. There's all this empty space to the upside, right? Here's okay. This one is the one I thought was most. So here's an example of the bids actually getting touched. A lot of them get taken out. That's 15,000 shares. It reclaims and they restack it. Now they like a 15k got taken out. They put another 15k on right here, and then they put another 5k. Then put another. And again, like TOS bookmap doesn't show all the orders, so there's actually even more than this. But it gives you a visual representation of what's happening. I only see this one ask up here of 410. And that's why it hits some resistance up here, pulls back. That ask is gone. Bids get tested again, and you can see how thick the bids are getting, man. This is when I said to the Discord, I was like, I told them I covered some at these bids. I covered some in the 390s because this is that same type of rigged action we saw on PXMD, SASI, and all those other ones where you get these violent pullbacks with bid support and then a squeeze through the empty space, right? This is really how the rig works. And I made the joke to people because I was short. I was like, did anyone long in the 390s? I was asking my Discord. I was like, did anyone long in the 390s? Because that is a big brain long, right? And you could just risk these bids, right? So it's all about making, whenever you see, a deep instant pullback from high day, this always has potential to be a short trap. But I don't know. I'm short up here in at 439. I'm just, I'll cover a little bit down here, and I'll just play the odds. I don't know what's going to happen. Don't know what's going to happen with bids. I'm just going to play the chart, set my risk. In this case, I just set my risk at this guy. There's some offers at 445, 446, and I just put my risk up here. I was like, okay, if this just goes up only through this offer, I'm just gonna take the loss, right? Because I knew it had a lot of potential, right? And then I didn't really trade any of this. I didn't trade this because I actually thought they removed the ask here and started stacking the bids. I thought this was gonna squeeze. They ended up pulling it, and then like it just grinded. And I'm looking at all these asks out here. I'm like, oh man, dude, like I'm not really seeing like a tactical pattern in this area. It still looks like thin grindy BS. I'm like, man, they still have sorry. They still have all these asks up here. I was like, I wonder what they're gonna do with them. And I saw that they got taken out and they started stacking bids and stacking bids and stacking bids and stacking bids. And I just didn't touch it. And then what ended up actually happening is all those bids got taken out and then it went into a down only fade. So it'd be like that. I didn't really have the read there. I just, I shorted this up here when they pulled the bids, and I shorted, not that, here, when it pushed into that 350 ask. And again, there's no bids to the downside, and I shorted it, and it went down. So, yeah, it'd be like that. TNON, thin rig. But yeah, main lessons, zero volume, especially when the stock's in the top of the range. And by top of the range, I mean like close to high day, above VWAP. If you're seeing like zero volume, if you see a bunch of volume come in, then zero volume at support, usually not a good thing. It messes up with follow through. It is easy for a rigger to come in and buy all those shares and push it up higher. I just consider these headaches. I do like to wait for the more consistent volume to come in to make trades, right? So I like to see the squeeze, and I like to see the volume after the squeeze. And if it's a little bit more consistent, it starts giving a nice little technical pattern to short into. I take those patterns. So hope that was a good one, TNON. Yeah, don't get chopped and stuff like this. This will happen. Really thin volume soak. I'm talking like less than 30k, 20k shares at support. Getting like, if a stock goes from like 400k down to 20k right away, like it's usually not a good thing. So, TNON, little rig. It's probably over. It's probably done. It's probably going straight down. So, Hope you have a good one. See you guys.